Good evening. My name is Amber Soto. I am a student at Southern Utah University pursuing a master's in accountancy. I am taking a class on accounting for decision making and control. In that class, I was able to read an article on who needs budgets. This article was written by Jeremy Hope and Robin Fraser, and they touched on a few important topics regarding budgets. I've been in the workforce for about 15 years now. During that time, I have worked for several different companies, all of which have formulated a yearly budget, and it was always the employee's responsibility to stay within those budgeted amounts. It was a very important part of measurement and performance for all of the companies that I've worked for. The article brings up, however, some disadvantages that fall within budgets. Part of it is budgets can be a very expensive and time-consuming process. They state that management can actually use up to 30% of their time to formulate a yearly budget with all of the review process and approvals that are required to formulate. It also can be cumbersome and unreliable. Another important disadvantage to touch on is how it can actually break down corporate ethics. What a sales force might do if they're given pressure to actually achieve a budget that is a bit unrealistic, they may decide to put in some fraudulent sales just to increase their amount so that they do achieve that budget. Another thing that they can do is they could actually hold over sales once they do reach that target because they want to push those sales into the following year's budget to make it a little bit easier for them to reach their budget next year. This is not good for business. It might be good for management, it might be good for their salaries or their bonuses, but overall it is not what the goal of the budget is supposed to achieve. And so what some companies have decided to do is do some alternatives. These alternatives are really good ideas. What they are is they are alternatives, goals and measurements that can be both financial and non-financial. Some of those include cost to income ratios, return on capital, profit measurements, cash flows. Non-financial measurements include customer satisfaction and quality, the time to market. Another alternative is a rolling forecast. The benefit of a rolling forecast, it can take into consideration industry changes that a yearly budget is not going to take it into consideration. This can make the rolling forecast much more realistic than what the budget can offer. There are many companies that have already decided to reject budgets altogether. There's no limits to those types of companies. They include banks, chemical companies, distributors, car manufacturers, brewers, retailers, you name it, and those companies have tried it. And they've been very successful. So one thing I'd like to point out is that just because I haven't been in one of those companies doesn't mean that budgets should continue. At least not in the fashion that they have been. Companies need to expand more into those alternative measurements just because budgets can be so time consuming and costly and many times unrealistic. They should really turn to the rolling forecast and the financial and non-financial measures of performance to make sure that their goals and management's goals are all in target to achieve the most for each company. Thanks and have a great night.